Farm4Profit podcast. Take a listen, have a blast. Farm4Profit podcast. Learn about farming while having a laugh. Farm4Profit podcast.
Day 2, quiet, cool morning out here at the Husker Harvest Days, sitting in the Sukup building, and excited to learn more about something that only Corey has experience with of the Farm4Profit podcast. Barely.
Yeah.
Corey, you own a pivot.
I actually do.
Have you operated your pivot?
I never have.
So that's as close as we've gotten for experience, Travis. So we are excited to have Travis Stevens here, founder of DirectPivotParts.com. Is it actually DirectPivotParts.com or is it just Direct Pivot Parts?
It's DirectPivotParts.com.
Nice. So excited to have you here. We connected a while back through connections with the Travis Burkhart Foundation and then also with other trade shows. So it's been fun. One of those guys that we had on the list to have on the podcast, and now we're excited to pick his brain to learn more about what pivot irrigation is and how that provides value to operators. And then for those that have had it or want to buy it, what are some things we should look out for? You ready to roll?
Yeah.
This is this is the first in our series of irrigation, right? We're going to explore a couple different irrigations.
Yep. So let's start off with the basic. What is a pivot?
A pivot is a centered irrigation system that in the center of the field you have a point and the rest of the system rotates around that point and distributes water.
So pivots around a single spot.
Correct.
Okay. So before we dive way deep into this topic, let's get a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, tie to agriculture. Go for it.
I grew up in St. Edward, Nebraska, rural town, about 400 people. Grew up on a farm, still farm, do row crop, corn, soybeans, cow-calf operation, do that with my dad. Went to college at Hastings Community College down the road from Grand Island here, did electrical technology and heating and air conditioning. Got out, did the internships, got my licenses, started electrical plumbing, heating, air conditioning business in St. Edward. Turns out with 400 people, you work on a lot of agricultural related things, pivots, grain bins, etc. And we got into the pivots and we found out that the parts were, in our opinion, really had a cornered market, and I think the farmers need more options. So we got into the parts, manufacturing, selling, and it just kind of went from there.
Wow. I had no idea that was your background. So you were an electrician by trade?
Yeah, I started out, as an electrician. I got a master's license here in the state of Nebraska.
Wow.
Do you still do that?
Try not to. I get suckered in. I do all of our own. We build our own panels, tower boxes, all that stuff. We do the drawings, all that stuff in-house. Our UL listed shop builds them, and that it does help for what we do.
So your motivation to start the business is you were performing electrical work and discovered that there was, in your opinion, a monopoly or an opportunity for others to provide a parts service.
Correct.
So what is the landscape of the industry? Why was it a cornered market?
In my opinion, is the big four, which would be probably a Valley, a Zematic, a Ranke, T&L. They did a great job of setting up dealer networks and setting up their part systems to where they had it covered. And I think the market just kind of forgot about the aftermarket stuff, where a lot of farmers, they don't buy all their filters from their Case or their John Deere dealer. They go to a Napa or a CarQuest or anything like that, and just different options. And that's what we provide, is a different option for that grower to purchase that product at a competitive price.
You said there's 4 major vendors. Like when your first one you said Valley, that's the only one I could think of if you had to ask me what's a brand of pivot.
You just walked through one, Dave.
I know,
it wasn't Valley.
and I don't remember it already.
Ranke.
That's what I'm saying.
Is that how you say it, Ranke?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there a lot more? Is there 10, 12 in the space?
In the there's also Pierce in the United States. After that, all the other pivots are foreign branded pivots mainly. You see them in other countries. Here in the United States, then would be the main 5.
Okay.
So.
So was it tough to get started in that business?
It was it's still tough. I'm not going to lie to you. There's been a lot of pushback on what we do. I am a firm believer in we need to educate our consumers. The smarter my customer is, the better customer they are. I love it when a guy comes up and tells me exactly what he wants and knows what he's doing. We're releasing a lot of YouTube videos coming up of how to check stuff yourself, how to install stuff yourself. I'm an advocate for farmers to have that education and the tools to fix their own product and to build products that are serviceable. That's really big to me.
Right. I appreciate that as someone that has a pivot now, but have never ran it and didn't grow up with it. Like if there was a gearbox go out or whatever, I see everyone in Nebraska complaining about it all the time. I wouldn't know the first thing to do. So someone putting out educational videos to me is a value. So thank you.
So do you get pressure from these 5 lines for selling their parts?
Yes.
Because you got to get the parts from them, right?
No, we work direct with some of the manufacturers that they get stuff from. We manufacture some stuff ourselves. We do a little bit of everything. All of our manufacturing we do ourselves is in Nebraska and South Dakota. Steel, electrical products are the main 2 things. And how should I say this? The industry is pretty small, and it's like a battery or an oil filter. Turns out there's only so many battery manufacturers and only so many oil filter manufacturers. People are just putting their names on it. And that's what we do is we bring that we give that option to that farmer where he can purchase that product without that OE paint on it.
So what was the first step? Like, how did you decide? Obviously, you saw there was an issue. What did you do to become Direct Pivot Parts?
It actually started out where we had a service department, and I had a lot of stuff in this big shed, and I'm like, we got to get rid of some of this old inventory. And we had a younger gal and a guy, and I go, put this stuff on eBay to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And it started selling. I'm like, man, I didn't think any of that stuff would sell. Then I'm like, let's put some good stuff on eBay, the stuff that does sell. And then I found out that eBay was taking like 15, 20%. Yeah. I'm like, man, that ain't cool. So we literally watched YouTube, me and another guy who worked for me, and we built our first WordPress website, which was very crude and bad because I'm not your computer guy when it comes down to it. But we put together a website, and it worked. Not great, and we're still improving our website. It's come leaps and bounds over what we used to. But the biggest thing in what we do is our price, like transparency and openness, because you walk into most dealerships and you don't see a price of parts, whether it's a tractor or a combine or a pivot. You don't walk in there and the price just ain't posted. We post all of our prices, let guys know, to give them that option and educate them, even if they're got a project coming up or if they're going to update a system or even add a system. We try to be extra transparent and give them as much information as we can.
So is there anybody else doing what you're doing?
There's some other companies online. We're the most hands-on. I would say that by far. We're the ones developing new product. We're the ones building our own equipment. And we're the only ones that's completely independent. So
nice. And then you're able to sell parts all over the place, right? Just ship them?
Yes, we sell all over the world.
Okay.
So is it just parts, or if someone wants a whole irrigation system, could they buy that from you?
We could do whole irrigation systems. We work with Pierce on the new pivots.
Okay.
But we could sell replacement, like structural parts. We manufacture ourselves for pretty much any of the brand of pivots we say. We make the pipe, the angle irons, the base beams, pretty much every electrical component that bolts onto them on their standard systems. We put out some really good quality stuff that'll bolt up one for one.
I know an auto parts guy that does that, but he kind of basically took what the parts were locally, maybe went overseas with it, word it that way, and then remanufactured the parts, and then he sells those online and distributes them all over. And a lot of people buy, but then a lot of the local race guys are like, I don't want to buy this because I know where it came from.
Foreign made.
Do you get any pushback on the fact? I'm not that you're foreign made, but I'm saying, do you get any pushback like you're trying to outsell? You're the scab of the guy that didn't want to go to work?
I'd agree somewhat with that statement. Then there are certain products that everyone I think there's some marketing done in the United States that misleads all of us. Like, if you think I'm looking out the door here and I see a Chevy pickup, you know, the controls, the microchips, all that are made overseas. Electrical components, you guys, I'll be the first to say, some of our components are made in North America and the United States. Some of them are made overseas. We do assemble all that stuff here.
I got you.
But there's certain parts that they do not make in the United States.
Yeah.
And even any of the top vendors, manufacturers, we're sourcing them from the same.
Everybody's sourcing it. Okay.
Yes, if it's a Honeywell micro switch, guys, I'll tell you straight up, it's made in Mexico. It's the only place they're made. If it's most of your bearings and stuff are being imported right now in the irrigation world. Most of, and I will say this, when it comes from overseas, whether it's a pickup, a tractor, any of it, you can get good stuff overseas. You just pay for it. But they do have the cheap stuff too. And you just have to have quality control and sort through it.
So is there a pivot Toyota and a pivot Lexus? Like, is there a difference in quality from you can get the base model or you can get the one that has all the bells and whistles?
There is that in center pivots. Every manufacturer makes their base model, and then they make their high-end model, and that usually comes with automation and telemetry when you get to the higher end, which means like it's got a computer panel, it's got telemetry, you could run it with your cell phone, things of that nature. Just convenience factors, just like your pickup or your tractor you're paying for.
I'm trying to think, how does as a farmer, and I'm not familiar with pivots, how do I know the cost per acre, or what's acceptable for a cost per acre on, like I say, you can go all the way around?
Cost per acre always, and we're breaking that down a little bit better, and we're going to have some stuff coming out that, like spreadsheets for farmers to help them out. The toughest thing right now, what you'll see in the United States, is your region. And we've kind of broke that up. We found out that different regions are paying different amounts for parts and pivots. Like if you're in the Pacific Northwest, it's a different price than Nebraska. And Nebraska is a different price than Panhandle of Texas, different price than Georgia. And part of that is the trucking, the distribution. Because even here in Nebraska, almost all your OEs, including us, a lot of parts are coming out of Nebraska. So when you see the price difference, once you cross the mountains with a truck, it costs more money. So, and we're trying to break that down and make it more even teal for everybody with a distribution network.
So you're selling parts. So I'm a total do-it-yourselfer guy, and I like to learn it. I'll YouTube it, I'll whatever, and I'll figure out how to fix it myself. However, the older I get, the more I realize the cost of just hiring the professional, and I save so much time, and they got it done faster, and it didn't take me 5 days, they did it in 10 minutes. Is there such a learning curve? Like, I'm thinking drywall. I tried to drywall a house once. I'm like, nope, not even going to happen. I can hire it done so much cheaper to get them out there. Is there that in pivots?
Well, I will say this. I completely agree with drywall. Drywall is not my forte, but and this will be the first place I announce it, but Direct Pivot Parts does have a product called Pivot Troubleshooter coming out, and it's in beta. We're testing it. It's patent pending, all that fun stuff. It will tell you what's wrong in the pivot and where from your cell phone, with or without a subscription. And with that, it will give you price of the part and how to install the part. So, and that, from our understanding and our research, we're finding the average service call is about $1,500 on a pivot. Plus, a lot of these dealers are understaffed. And that goes with any sort of dealer. From any agricultural deal out there, guys, you know it just as well as me, is staffing in our service departments is tough. So it might be 2 days, 3 days, or longer before that guy could get to you. So what Pivot Troubleshooter will do is it will tell you what's wrong in what tower, and then how to diagnose it, to double check to make sure the system's doing it, and we'll give you an avenue to buy the parts direct from us at a competitive price.
Here, I thought you were going to say that Direct Pivot Parts is now offering drywall services when you started that.
They will be disappointed in my drywall ability.
But that's neat to see that, again, you found another hole in the industry. But I want to get back to us learning about pivots, because we drove out here and we can see those, and you got to move them out of the way to combine and farm around them. But then all of a sudden you drive past one that it looks like it's broken because there's a chunk or two sections that are 90 degrees from the rest of it to avoid hitting the fence. I had no idea that they can bend like that.
Mm-hmm.
They do. They have bending joints that'll let them bend at any tower and wrap around a grain bin or a farm site or a tree line, which is a great deal. Corner arms, and they're just trying to utilize every irrigated acre, especially as land prices go up and you're paying more than what we've ever paid for agricultural ground that need to get as efficient as we can on that property. We need it. And there's only so much ground for most farmers in their regional area, so you're limited to growth. So a lot of guys are just trying to do a better job on what they own. And that's where you see that corner arm, which goes in and out as the field's needed to cover the most amount of acres you can.
So you do a bend like that, and then you throw a big sprinkler on the end of it to help reach further then, probably.
If you have enough water, yes, we run in guns and booster pumps, and that all depends on your gallons per minute, the water available underneath you. Nebraska's overall is pretty plentiful in water. There's regions that you won't see an in gun, like you get it down into the panhandle of Texas, southwest Kansas guys, you'll see wells that aren't pumping as much, so your goal is to get the water to the ground.
What is minimum water?
Man, you get to certain drag systems, and they're doing it off like down to 90 gallons a minute.
Really?
And I'm not saying it works great, but it'll raise a crop. So you could take some pretty minimal areas and you could get a crop out of something that you might not get a crop, or it could save your crop even.
Right.
So more the better, though. If you got more water, the better.
What's ideal?
Man, if you're going over, in my opinion, if you got over 600 gallons a minute is where it starts getting easier.
Okay.
That's the word I'm going to use, is easier. There's regions where it's over 1,000 gallons a minute. It goes all over the place.
So, Dave, you and I were talking last night. You want one of those end sprinklers, or maybe more than one of them.
Yeah, I have a small enough field that I just see how far those. I'm guessing how far they go. About 100 feet. I don't know. The end guns. I wondered if I could make it so that I didn't have the pivot in the middle, because I don't want to take any of the ground in the middle. I just want to irrigate from the outside, just because I have sandy soil. But then we learned the other day there's all kinds of different irrigations. So do you just deal in pivots?
No, we do a ton of wheel line stuff and lateral move.
See, in Montana, that's what we always had, was wheel lines.
Yes.
What do we got? Yeah, go through all the types that you work with, and then explain what those are.
Pretty much, if it's irrigation, we work with it. We do a ton of wheel line stuff. Mainly, you see that in the Montana, Wyoming, Pacific Northwest. Do a ton of wheel line parts out there. Didn't even know what it was till we got online, and I went out there. We got educated. It's old technology that works. The guys are good at it out there. The fields are set up for it. That's the main thing. You could take square paddocks and do your crops that don't grow as tall, alfalfa, wheat, things of that nature, and get by with a wheel line. Traveling guns, which would be like what you're talking about in pastures. Guys will dig in underground and put stationary guns, or they'll have a cart where they pull a soft hose, or they have a reel on it and do pastures. You see a lot of that in Wyoming, Montana, Pacific Northwest.
Is there a thing called pods? I swear, when I went out to visit Idaho, they had these like pods you pulled around with the four-wheeler, and it's just like this huge pole drag line, but they had all these little pods that had end guns on them, basically, throughout the pasture.
Yeah, that'd be a traveling cart.
Traveling cart,
yep.
Okay.
And they have ones with reels built on them, or you pull your hose. And
Okay.
they're very effective in a pasture situation.
Do you sell parts for that stuff too?
Yes, we do.
So, what were the other two? You said lateral and linear?
Yeah, well, like a wheel line runs laterally across the field. So, and like the carts are the big guns. Then you got subsoil drip irrigation, which we don't do a lot with. There's a lot of different ways to irrigate. and we're all trying to get more efficient, but yet not break the bank as farmers.
What about all these pipes that I see? So we were just driving back and forth from the hotel to the show, and you see like a furrow at the end of the row, and you don't have end rows. It doesn't appear anyway, and it looks like flood irrigation, but some of them have pipes. So is that just flood irrigation, and then what do you call the pipes?
Well, the pipe, it is flood irrigation, but it's gated pipe, and
Okay.
you open up a gate per row. In this Grand Island area, there's a ton on level ground that's sloped correctly. You just open up that gate and you get enough water flowing and it goes to the end of the field, and they either reuse pit or the water's gone by the end of the field. And we sell parts for them too. We sell
do?
the pipe,
Okay.
we sell the gates, ton of gaskets. It's labor intense, but the guys, they've done it their whole lives, so they're good at it most of the time.
So then how do I know if Corey decides he wants to irrigate one of his fields, how does he know what system's going to be the best for him? Is there certain things in consideration? Topography, obviously water source is going to be universal. How do you know if you should be using which system?
I would say talk to someone who's done a fair amount of irrigation, and they're going to lead you in the right direction, especially if you're new to the irrigation game, and then talk to more than one person. Get your options, get it out there, learn how much water you have and what kind of pump you're running usually is a big determination. And the crop you're trying to do makes a big determination. Even that comes from sprinkler systems on your pivots to whether it's a Wheelline, whether it's a cart, whether it's gravity. Each situation's different, so just explore your options. And a lot of the guys locally in your area will let other farmers that are already doing it will have some good, what they did right and what they did wrong.
Do you have, so you sell more parts possibly, but you might have the answer to this. Is there we're in Iowa, and in Iowa, we don't see a whole lot of irrigation, but I kind of feel like there could be more. So we feel we get enough rain already, but like Corey, you said you're not using yours. You have one.
Oh, well, you're using it. I'm just not running it.
Oh, you're just not running it. Okay, that's so. What if we give it even more water than what Iowa gets normally? Is there a rate of return of how much we get back in yield? I mean, what's the average dry land versus irrigated? I guess I'll start there. Dry land versus irrigated. Do we bump up 100 bushel?
Well, the biggest thing, guys, is your region, and that's what we found as we keep growing. Different regions, irrigation is a necessity to grow that crop. Other regions, it's an insurance policy to grow that crop.
Okay.
Like even Nebraska here, there's places on my own farms where I'll run 3 circles a year one year. And then you have years where they don't shut off all year. You get down into the panhandle of Texas, southwest Kansas, without that machine, their crops are going to be very minimal. So it's kind of a necessity in certain areas. There are also options that help, like in Iowa, what you'll see is, number one, you're buying an insurance policy. This is all my personal opinion, guys. You're buying an insurance policy. Number two, you could also, with the amount of influent in that area through feedlots or hog sheds, you could distribute your influent and utilize it in that way and use it to get rid of that in an efficient manner. Number three, you could put on insecticide and herbicide through a pivot instead of a sprayer, which is fast and easy compared to the cost of even my own sprayer. Believe me, my sprayer is great and I love running it, but it's easier just to hit start on my pivot and pump that stuff in there. And same with nitrogen. We could spoon feed that nitrogen. Certain soils that their percolation rates are fast, if you spoon feed that nitrogen to it, that crop does do better. So your soil type makes a big difference of how we could utilize that as a tool. I mean, irrigation just ain't for water. It could be used to distribute them other products in an efficient manner.
Do you sell those parts too for fertigation?
Yes, we do. We do a ton. We rebuild them. We sell new. We sell parts for them. It's a very valuable tool, and I think as the price of equipment goes up, it's a really cheap option. Like if you're buying and I'll just shoot this off my hip. If you're buying, if you want to chemigate and you want to put on 32 through your pivot, that pump is only going to run you like $2,200 for a cheap pump, and you could move that from pivot to pivot. Well, at $2,200, I don't even want to tell you what I paid for a sprayer.
Right.
So, or even a culture machine or a side dressing, whatever you want. So there's an efficient way to do that, and it gives you an option, especially if you don't have the acres to compensate for that machine. You could still get them benefits at least underneath that circle that you have out there.
How about this? This is probably an elementary question, but you know, the outside of the pivot is moving a lot faster than the inside of the pivot. How do you manage to get the same amount of water on all the way? Is it different size, like sprinkler heads?
It can change in heads. It depends on the packages. Usually you go by nozzle size, and towards the end of that pivot, it has bigger holes in the nozzles, so it's putting on more. And as you get closer to the center, they get smaller. And we all do that through a software. A lot of people have put a lot of time and money into developing that software. And if we get the right data, it works. I mean, it truly works. Like the water distribution, we got some videos coming out this year in Nebraska. It's been extra dry. Me and Mike have been taking out drones, and even on my own pivots, you could see exactly where that system, let's say, had a bad regulator or a plug nozzle or an issue in that system. You could see it. Like, our ears are dropping early right now. Guys are harvesting right now in Nebraska, and you could see where them ears drop faster just by inadequate water or improper sprinkler packages are huge, guys. Especially the lifespan of a sprinkler system, we all tend to run them longer. I mean, a lot of the manufacturers are telling us 8 years roughly. I mean, you could get more. I do more sometimes. Your water quality makes a big difference on the life of that sprinkler, but you could really tell the difference. So if you get good, even distribution, it'll do a better job. And you could tell it years like this year in Nebraska. When it's dry, you could go out there with a drone or even look at your harvest maps and see the difference in them.
So you said 8 years?
Just on the sprinkler.
That's just on and water quality has to do with everything, with the life of water.
What's a pivot last? What's the longevity?
Where I'm at, we have beautiful, I mean, we're in the Ogallala Aquifer in northern Nance County, Boone County, Nebraska, and there's literal serial number 1 pivots around us from the manufacturers. Wow. So our water is pristine. Has a little iron in it, but other than that, like when I say iron, it turns a little bit white here and there, but our galvanization lasts a long time. It don't rust out. You get south of us, like 15 miles along the river, I mean, their pivots will only last 7-8 years because they'll rust out because of what they have in their water. It'll eat up that galvanization quicker.
The reason I ask that is, so I'm going to take my stance that I always take, and it's selling land. If there's a pivot on it, I'm trying to value that. Like, if I have one that's 10 years old, it's not just as easy as that one's 10 years old. It's that one's 10 years old, but in a certain area, is what I'm hearing.
On the steel side of it, correct.
Okay.
When it comes to the age of the pivot, you know, they do have hour meters. Your gearboxes do last X amount of time. Same with center drives and your electrical components, which we're great at upgrading. I tell that's part of the reason we got into this was at first our pivots were old that I grew up with. Like, they were bought before I was born. And I got tired of just like fixing one thing at a time, and I'm like, why don't we just put all new gearboxes, center drives, knuckles, and tower boxes on them? Then I don't have to walk them anymore on my own. So I went out there and we did that to a lot of my own pivots where the steel's still good, and we just bolted all new components on it. So
there you go, Corey. Performance upgrade kits.
There you go.
That's pretty much, we got specials on them right now. We just upgrade it and not walk it. And if you could do it in the off season as a farmer, the savings you get off when you could drive up to it with your pickup and do that work compared to lugging that thing out there when the corn's 12 foot tall, I'll do that all day. If I could work out of my pickup, guys, I'll do that all day rather than drag stuff in. So,
yeah, I always thought that was interesting the first time I came across it when you saw guys driving out there running over what looked like perfectly good corn just to go on a rescue mission. Either flat tire, gearbox out, something else that caused them to have to go out there unexpectedly. And I just couldn't believe that made financial sense to do that.
So here at the show, going around, I think I've seen, 9 different tires. Is that like the biggest issue with pivots is the type of tires? I've seen plastic, I've seen steel, I've seen extruded steel, I've seen rubber, different quality, foam filled, et cetera, et cetera.
We deal in all of them, and I got some really interesting videos on YouTube and other platforms I'm going to drop out there comparing them. And that's our number one question is, what tires do I need? It comes down to what crop you're growing, your soil type, and what you're trying to do. This now right here is 100% opinion, guys. Is the most versatile thing is a radial rubber tire. you guys, when it comes to tires, if you want a good tire that sheds mud, you got to have flexibility. That's why that radial on your tractor, when it looks flat and it's flexing, it has the ability to move and get the mud off of it. A hard tire is like a steel wheel or a hard rubber solid wheel or a plastic wheel. It don't have any flex, so it's not going to have the ability to shed the mud off of it. Huh. And that's where you see, you'll see people complaining about the solid tire not working. Everything works in sand about. I'm not saying everything, but it's the most versatile soil that we can run anything in. No one likes rubber. Our rubber ain't going to last as long as what it used to before it cracks and goes out on us. But, if you're getting 10 to 15 years out of that rubber without dry cracking, that's a great tire. No one likes fixing them. We never fix them soon enough or replace them soon enough before they go flat. And sometimes it does they go flat. It happens. It's just like on your pickup. But when it comes to tires, your soil's number one, and topography, it's our number one question. And a radial rubber is going to be your best tire in most markets. They do have steel appendages and plastic appendages that go around the outside of the rubber that help it float across the top. You're adding more moving parts, more wear parts, but there's certain situations where you got to have it to make it work. So,
who makes the best rubber tire?
I'm not going to lie to you. A lot of them are made in a lot of the same places.
Oh, really?
And just
it's not like a Goodyear versus a Firestone or anything like that, like in tractors. I'm not going to speak for any of them, put it that way. I'm not going to speak for any manufacturer because we deal with them all. Everybody everybody's got a good product. Yeah.
Firestone's a good product. Goodyear's a good product.
Are you utilizing the IF technology where they're using like steel belts and you can run a lower PSI and widen your footprint? Or
we're not seeing the steel belts yet. Yeah. You'll see the biggest thing that works, like I said, is that radial tire. Mm-hmm. And when you do see a steel belt, it's like we're putting like a BKT or a Firestone radial, which is when you're seeing that extra amount of money go into a pivot tire, it's a tractor tire, guys. We're putting on a 38-inch rim. That's literally what we're doing. We're putting a tractor tire that has the flex in it, and you got to have that better sidewall and you got to have that better tire to run that lower.
How about tracks? Is there ever any tracks?
There's tracks. Guys have made them. They've been here, went away. They have their situation where they work right. It's kind of like a bulldozer or a tractor. You got a lot of wear points in tracks and mud in them, and everyone forgets is nothing against a solid tire or track. Here in Nebraska, if it gets, or in either other regions too, if it freezes, you got to remember, guys, that track ain't going to move. If I go out there and we get an early frost and that thing's packed full of mud, it's dead in the water to where you'll see issues with that. Then it may try to go, but it may break something to try to go.
So you said it doesn't shed mud. Are you irrigating that much that you're making the ground muddy?
Yes.
Okay.
You want if you get certain soils, guys, all it takes is 20 hundredths to make it stick. So
it sounds like there's all kinds of vendors and apertures that have been added to pivots throughout the years. So as I'm walking around the show, I have an idea where we add a canopy. So I see all these cattle canopies to the top of a pivot that if you grazed cattle or if you did cover crop as well, then you could put your cattle out there and then you'd have shade for them as they go around. And even if you move the shade, maybe then they would fertilize, as it moves around the area. But then Corey says it'd probably blow away. Has anybody ever tried putting a canopy on a...
I've seen guys are experimenting with solar panels on them, which could be
that's a great idea.
As a canopy. Guys are... I've seen electric fences hooked to them. So, like, as that pivot moves around, it keeps the cattle on the side that you want them on.
Okay.
I've seen actual sprayers on, like, cable tracks that run the length of the pivot. So it's spraying like a low dose, which I wasn't a huge fan of. But, you see all sorts of stuff, guys. Guys experimenting with them, trying different things. Cost effectiveness is always the toughest part. The cost effectiveness and the lack of portability is always the tough part.
I imagine it's muddy because you're watering like straight down most of the time. Why don't you just shoot the water like to the
Behind
direction behind?
They have products called boombacks that do help. They have half spray sprinklers for them that do help. There's a lot of things you do. Eliminating a pivot track is like the industry's like $1 million question. Everybody's out there pumping out a product that you think. I mean, I've seen back in the day they had like a bag of a product like a rock that would go on there and it'd go in there and help the soil be better. Not saying it worked or didn't work, but I mean, I've seen tracks, steel tires, plastic tires, different tread designs, flexible rubber tires, solid rubber tires, and just turns out when we drive in circles, it makes a track. And there's stuff that you'll see in our videos that release and makes less of a track, and that's our goal.
Does anybody just shift where the tires are?
You can.
Do they make, like we widen the
Oh,
track?
yeah. Why not just put a spacer on the rim?
We widen the track on our tires if we're 30-inch rows versus, old days we narrow it or widen it. And, even like my pallet forks have hydraulics on it that move them back and forth to make them 12 inches wide or make them 48 inches wide. Is there a way to do that on pivots, or is it just cost effectiveness?
There's a lot of guys who are, you'll see it in areas where they irrigate year-round. They will take and add like a 4-foot pipe in certain spans where they have the area in the field and move that track, which does work. It's just a lot of labor. I don't have the answer for pivot tracks because I'd probably be a lot richer if I did.
If you did.
If I had that answer, and I think everybody's trying to find that answer, and number two is the ease of it, because we could say whatever, but if they tell you you're supposed to change your air filter every 6 months on your side-by-side, are you really changing it every 3 to 6 months like you're supposed to be? We have a tendency to run it as long as we can as farmers.
I think it's kind of crazy when you guys cross like a creek or something and you got a bridge that it goes over, and the guys are out there engineering their own bridges and things for the pivot tracks to go over, the tires to go over.
What if, all the drone stuff we've done, what if you just had enough propellers on that thing that it just floated like a hovercraft around and there is no tires?
That'd be costly.
There's no tires.
I did see a video of, just yesterday, I think it was on TikTok, they were with one of the sprayer drones, they were carrying like a 135-pound gearbox out to a pivot with it. So I thought that was pretty cool.
You could do hot air balloons and then propane.
There you go.
Going
just
and
put them up.
pumping it. And
all you need to do is carry the weight of that at 8 pounds a gallon. Yep.
See, we got all the answers.
And we just have to do them, guys.
Yes, that's right.
What about when a gearbox goes out or a tire goes flat? What happens to that pivot? Does it shut itself down? Do you find it all in a wreck, or what's going on?
Most of the time, they shut themselves down. When you see the wrecks, failures do happen. Like micro switches, electrical safety components do fail. It's just like in a Murphy switch in a diesel or a propane motor. Sometimes that fails and it runs out of water, it overheats, and it don't turn off. Same with a pivot. There's an electrical micro switch in there on an electric pivot where once it gets so far out of line, it safety's out. And then usually that's when you see, like if you have a normal straight pivot, you see a bend in it. Wherever that bend is, that's the tower that's having an issue. So you go out there and you diagnose it, and whether it's a flat tire or a busted knuckle or a center drive or an electrical issue, you go out there and you fix it.
What are the other parts called? So we got end gun, we got tower. That's where the wheels are, right?
Well, every pivot has multiple tower. Well, every pivot has a tower, and on that you have 2 gearboxes, a center drive, 2 drive shafts, and 4 knuckles. And on top you have a electrical control box on your standard intermediate towers, which are all your towers in the middle. They'd have 2 micro switches, a on-off safety switch for all the wires, a contactor, and usually a suppressor, which stops arcing in between all.
So what are the arch pieces in between each one called?
That would be a span.
That's a span?
Yep.
And then, like you call them Y drops on your sprayer, do we call the drops anything?
There is that. Now we're digging into a whole nother thing, guys, with sprinkler systems. That's like the second most asked question behind tires. It's like, what's the best sprinkler system?
Oh, okay.
Because you said early on that it depends upon the crop.
Yes, it's your crop, it's your even your region, with how bad your wind is, how bad your sunlight is, and even your topography.
It's just spraying water.
It is just spraying water.
And they're mostly all steel, or galvanized. And there's aluminum, correct?
There's aluminum, stainless steel, there's polyline galvanized and galvanized.
Is there any just plastic
Not at this point.
that to like lighten it up? How about carbon fiber?
No. The problem with lightening it up, like here in Nebraska, is when you see the piles of pivots in the corner, it's usually because the wind came and blew them over. So there's like this double-edged sword of, we want it light so you're not making tracks.
Yeah.
But if you get it too light, you're going to have tip-over issues.
If you've got your hot air balloon carbon fiber,
Correct.
it may actually blow over to Des Moines in a storm.
Took to the tower, man. It can't. Yeah.
I always think it's interesting when you see the videos of the spans going down the road.
Yeah, that's a whole different breed of dudes doing that, and I got lots of admiration for them. We've done it before. You can move a lot of steel really fast, and it's amazing that structure of any brand is able to do that. And pretty much what you do is you unhook it at your pivot tower, and you have one set of wheels, and you pull that span down the road to the next field.
So the wheels don't like twist to go down the...
No. They can if you have a towable pivot, but you don't tow it down the road. You just move it in the field if you have towable gearboxes.
What's the point of towing it somewhere? They're just too cheap? They don't want to buy two? They just move it around?
Pretty much. Like you've seen it more, you don't see it as much now, but back in the 70s when we worked a lot more, I mean, the guy went from a hand move or a gravity pipe, and to save money, he bought a pivot, which you could take that whole thing and turn all them wheels sideways and pull it with the tractor across that section to a different spot. Then you chain it back down and you hook it back up and run it more, which is a lot of labor. And when farming was good, they go, well, instead of towing this pivot, let's just put up another one over there so we don't got to move back and forth. And they had a lot more wear points when you start having that many moving points.
So what about, I see at the show here, so been to a lot of different shows, and at this show there's a lot of generators / pumps / motors that are out maybe where these irrigation systems are. But I noticed they don't have any covers on them. Is it just because it doesn't rain, we're not worried about it rusting? Or what? They're like all open motors just to the air.
They do make covers. Most of the time the guys put them up themselves. Like it's a little shed with 4 posts with 10 over the top of it, you see. And I'm a big believer in put covers over even your electric motors, your electric panels, your propane, diesel generators. That sunlight is you put anything out in your yard and wait 10 years and go look at it, and that sunlight will just beat on it and ruin it.
I got one more on the, you said something about the quality of water and the lifespan of these, and I think we talked about in our drip irrigation talk about like bicarbonates and the quality of water. Do you guys address the quality of water going in at all?
You do, and that's where, like, we have stainless steel replacement parts, and there's polyline parts. If you're in a region where you have that bad problem, and you know if you have bad water. I mean, them guys have been farming it. You could see it even on the colors of the steel, colors of all that stuff, and you could do a water test. That's the best way to do it. But you design that system and give them the parts that's going to last them the longest in their environment. So
we've talked a lot about the mechanical of because you're a parts guy, of all the different pieces, parts that I've asked questions on, and we kind of hit different types of irrigation. What I feel like we're missing something here. Like it's I feel like irrigation is so prevalent in Nebraska that we haven't covered something, and I don't know, guys. What am I missing here? We've talked types of irrigation. Is it better than other types of irrigation for a reason?
Efficiency and ease of use. You guys, if you have an electric system with no motor, no anything, literally you go out there and you hit a button and it should go if everything's right. And it does most of the time. You hear the complaining when, they're irritators, everything else, and I get that. I own my own. They do break. And the biggest thing, guys, is just ease of use, and it's no different than a bigger 12-row head, and you went from your 6-row back in the day. The amount of acres we could cover and do a good job of changes. And even as land prices go up, we got to utilize that land that we have and do a better job of it, unless you're going to start farming further and further away from home. And on the other side of that, you could farm further and further away from home if you have efficient ways of farming it. So
that's a good point. You had mentioned early on that you've got your troubleshooter coming out, but what else is on the future horizon for direct pivot parts?
I would probably say just consumer education, guys. I love consumer education.
And when you're saying consumer education, you're talking about those that consume your products or the actual consumer that we think of as someone from the city?
Everybody. I don't care. I'll say this. I don't care what you do with it once you buy it. You can do whatever you want with it. But even if you could take this and I look at it even, I have beef. And I think a big problem with any agriculture is just the education of what we do. So if we could educate society as a whole of what we do, and as farmers, most farmers are trying to do the best for their land and the best for their communities and the best to keep it going. So the more education we could put out there and educate it, and we might be able to take some of them kids from our service industry side and say, hey, that's kind of neat. Maybe I'm living in, like even here, Grand Island, Nebraska, it's the third biggest town in Nebraska. You could pull that kid out to a town that's 10 miles from there and say, hey, I want to be in the irrigation world. That looks kind of neat to me. I'm mechanically, electrically oriented, and you could spark that interest and get people involved in that never grew up with it, because the farm kids aren't out there like they used to. So if we could pull them people over from other regions, I guess I should say, that'd be neat, I think.
So your directpivotparts.com, is it all online, or do you have like a brick and mortar store somewhere? Can they come pick up parts?
We have brick and mortar stores in Georgia, Texas, Nebraska, and we're working on a Pacific Northwest right now, and one other one that I can't say much about yet.
Okay.
And the biggest thing for that, guys, is we're just trying to get that footprint out there to where we get parts to the consumer faster.
Right.
And nothing against Amazon, they just did a great job of everyone expecting their stuff there in 2 days.
Right.
So
well, when something's broke down,
yes,
and it's crucial, you want it now.
Especially if it's during a heat dome.
Yeah, is it a lot of next day shipping type stuff?
We run into that some. We do try to advocate none of our warranties start till the day you bolt it on. I want everyone to be prepared. I'm not going to punish you for, number one, purchasing correct. Like, you got some pre-COVID guys who loaded up on some stuff. They seen it coming, so they bought a lot of parts before the price increases happened. And they might have that part on the shelf for a year and a half before they bolt it on. And we truly appreciate the business, and you're a smart guy for playing that game right. That warranty ain't going to start till the day you bolt it on, and we advocate for that. But it never fails. You're not going to have everything.
Is there a better time of the year to purchase these and maybe have a little parts stock yourself? It
used to be. There's some products like pipe, wire, anything that's resin-based is petroleum-based. And traditionally, like November, December was always a great time. As you guys could tell, I think petroleum's going up. So as I look at it, underground pipe and wire will usually follow that trend up. And which steel, I mean, once petroleum goes up, guys, our transportation, everything goes up. So, and then there's supply and demand side of it too. During the COVID stuff, certain factories on PVC and wire, it was like we were begging for it, which we had it, but some of the prices got out of control, in my personal opinion, and that was a supply and demand thing.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Well, guys, I just got the payoff question left. If you do, anything else? Go for it. All right, we ask every one of our guests the same question. What do you enjoy most about working with farmers?
The different perspectives they bring to the table in different regions. Once we started getting into different regions, I loved hearing the way different guys farm. From the Wheelline was like a huge educational part for it. I didn't even hardly look at one until like 5-6 years ago. The way guys grow potatoes, cotton, that is just awesome. And the different demeanors of the way guys farm in different regions. If they're in a hot, arid place and they know it ain't going to rain tomorrow, they're a little bit more laid back. Where if they're in a place where the wind could blow 50 miles an hour and knock that corn down, they're in a really big hurry to get that crop out or get that crop in the ground because of it could rain the next day and shut them off for a week. So, and Farmers as a whole is a great community. Even like I met you guys through TikTok and everything else. It's the education and different ways of guys doing it. Even guys from Australia. It's a great community overall, and I think farmers are for farmers, which is great.
I love it. Well, listeners, if you're curious about learning more about irrigation systems, you got to hit up Direct Pivot Parts out on YouTube. If you've got the need to buy or purchase any type of product from them, www.directpivotparts.com. Got that right?
Yep, you got it right.
Well, Travis, we appreciate you hanging out with us. This was a lot of fun. You educated us. We certainly learned.
Yeah.
So thank you so much.
Thank you guys. Appreciate being on and appreciate what you guys do. The education is great. So,
and listeners, we appreciate you hanging out as well. And until next time, have a good one.